Hello everyone, in this video we are going to learn about the pseudo elements, and without wasting any time let me proceed further into the topic. Okay, this is the general web page that we have done till the previous video, and pseudo elements are nothing but applying some special features or special properties to a particular letter in a word or particular line in a paragraph. That means we are going to make changes for the only required thing in a set of content. That means if I want to make changes for this f only, that means this f alone I want to apply some changes. For suppose I want to make this f with a font size of more than all other letters, that means we can have pseudo elements. That means with the use of pseudo elements we can make changes for only a particular letter in this entire sentence, or for only a particular line for this entire paragraph. That means these pseudo elements are used to style specified parts of an element. For example, it can be used to style the first letter or first line of a particular element. Let us apply those pseudo elements to our web page. And for suppose I want to make this f letter to a bigger extent. That means I want to make this f letter alone with some different color and with some different size rather than all other letters in this father of oops. For that, let me consider this father of oops in HTML file markup language. See here, this father of oops is under h2 element, right? Overview of oops and this father of oops. These two are considered under the h2 element. That means if we apply some changes to the particular h2 element selector, we are going to apply the changes for this father of oops. That means we can apply pseudo elements for the h2 element directly. In our style.css file, I will include h2, right? h2 with colon operator. Okay. In for the pseudo classes we will use only single colon, right? And for the pseudo elements we are going to use two colons, right? This element name and with two colons, and we are going to apply content in which we are going to apply our properties. That means in this we are have to include first letter, right? For the first letter we want to make changes. Within that first letter, if I made changes with my font size as nearly 50 pixels, and I want to change my color, right? Color as generally it is in brown shade. I want to make my color as green. Okay, if I going to save this, if I refresh this page, see here the particular letter, that means here we are considering the h2 element, right? h2 element. For that h2, this is the h2 element. For this entire h2 element we are considering the pseudo element, right? This pseudo element is nothing but first letter. Within the pseudo element, by using two colon symbols, in that pseudo element we are considering first letter. That means for this entire h2 element we are considering only the first letter. Okay, we are considering only the first letter. For that first letter we can apply changes like this. I am increasing the font size to 50 pixels and color to green. Okay, for see here we are using h2 element, right? For every h2 element these all properties will be applied. For every h2 element, first letter. Okay, if you see here, this is the o, which is nothing but this is entire is the h2 element, and the first letter should be have these properties. Okay, should have all these properties. Okay, that's the general usage of the pseudo elements. And moreover, if you want to make the changes for this first line, okay, within this paragraph, if you want to make changes with this first line, that can also be done by using our pseudo elements. If I want to make changes for my every para, I am using p element. That means we are going to apply changes for every paragraph in our web page. And in this I want to use first line. Okay, I am using first line. For that first line I want to make my font weight as bold. Okay, and font size somewhat 30 pixels for your simplicity. And I am turning my color to no, not color. Okay, we are leaving all these properties. If I going to refresh this page, see, if you can observe carefully, every paragraph. This is entire one paragraph. This is entire thing is one paragraph. This entire thing comes under one paragraph element, one P element. For that entire paragraph element, we are going to apply changes for the first line of every paragraph. So I'm going to maximize this. See here. If you observe carefully, this is one paragraph, right? This entire thing will be considered under one paragraph. For this paragraph, we are going to apply changes for the only first line. Okay, and this paragraph, first line, and these are all the single paragraphs, right? So this paragraph does not have any more lines. So the first line will be considered as the topmost line, so that the properties will be applied to this single line. Okay, these are all the paragraphs, right? This paragraph have the first line, the data type of the value returned by the method or void if. Okay, this is the first line of this paragraph. So whatever the properties we are going to apply in within this first line pseudo element within this paragraph, those all properties will be applied to every first line of every paragraph in our web page. Okay, this is the general usage of the pseudo elements, and we have another usage that it is most important one that we have to keep in mind. And for now I am going to remove this thing, I don't need it. Okay, I want to remove this entire thing. The another thing that we can done with these pseudo elements are, if you observe carefully, this is one container, right? This is one container, and this entire thing is one container, and this entire thing is one container. That means if you observe carefully, there is no linkage between this thing and this thing. That means we have borders, right? These borders we have, right? These borders. For example, if you want to link these two, right, with some clipboard or with some any highlighting, we are going to say the users that these two comes under the one topic. That means if we have any linkage between these two files with some clipboard or with some any empty box like structure, to get you a brief understanding about it, let me dump those things in a practical way. I am decreasing it. See, for this H2 element, here we have H2 element, right? In this H2 element, I am using H2 pseudo element selector, and within this H2 element, I am using after, right? This after is apply everything whatever we are going to add in this content will be applied for this H2 element after. That means after this H2 element, this is enter the H2 element, we are going to apply changes after this. That means if we see here before, for example, if I consider here before, the elements which are going to be held between these two brackets will be placed before the H2 element, right? And if I going to use after, the things which we have done within these curly braces will be going to apply with after the H2 element. And I am using H2 after, and in this H2 after, when you are going to add pseudo elements like after or before, the mandatory thing that we need to keep in mind here is content. Okay, here content is the mandatory thing. Whether you have content or not, the content is the mandatory thing. For example, if you don't need to add any content, leave the content property like this. Or suppose if I want to add something like content in this, suppose I am using SHE. Okay, if I want to use any content, you can add any content. Otherwise you can leave this content property empty. Okay, but this content property is the mandatory thing for this pseudo element. Okay, and I am using SHE. Okay, if I going to refresh our page, see here, after this H2 element, the content which we are going to apply within this pseudo element will be displayed. If you see here, this is the H2 element, right? After this H2 element, we are going to apply the content, right? SHE content. And I want to add some additional background to my content. That means I am using background color, right? My background color I want to take lawn green, right? Lawn green. Okay, so I'm going to refresh the page. See here, we have background color of lawn green for our content, right? And for your simplicity, as for now, let me create one background color for this entire H2 element, because we can identify easily the H2 adding elements, right? In this H2 direct element selector, I am going to apply my background color as black for now. Okay, if I going to refresh, you can see this is entire thing is the HT element. And what the thing I want to do here is, I want to make this SIG to the as the linkage between these two pages, right? These two containers, right? This SIG should be here, right? Should be here. Okay, so that I am using background color for the HT element for your simplicity to identify the entire HT header, right? Here also it will be applied. And after that I want to make sure that these should be moved to here. For that I am going to decrease this. Within this HT element I want to make my position relative. Okay, with relative to this HT element it should be applied, and here I am using position absolute. Okay, absolute positioning, right? And I want to make my top and right properties, because we are going to have this thing here, right? For that I am using top element to 0 and right element to 0 for the just clearance. And if I going to refresh, see here, for this particular HT element the entire content thing will be set right to the corner. That means here the top element will be set right to 0 and the right thing will be set right to 0. Okay, and another thing is I want to make this thing above this the header. For that if I give the top as nearly 35 pixels, right? If I consider this thing, see here, from this H2 it will be dimensioned with top as 35 pixels, right? The distance between this element and this header as 35 pixels. But the thing we need to understand here is, we don't want this symbol here. We need this symbol between these two. That means it should be above the header element. For that if we include minus 35, okay, I am including minus 35, that means above this header element it should be reflected. For that if I going to refresh, see here, the things will be set right to the as we required. Okay, if I maximize it, see here, we have the symbol of SIG between these two linkages and between these two linkages. We can make changes like this. But this is not clear and I want to remove this content, right? I am removing this content and I am going to refresh, but it will be not be reflected here. But the thing we need to keep in mind is, we don't have any container here. Okay, we don't have any content and within the container. For that if I add some padding like 20 pixels top and right, top and bottom, and 20 pixels left and right, if you observe carefully, we have some empty container, right? Without any content, right? We have empty one. We need this one, but here it is okay, but it is not looking good. For that I want to make my top one as 40 pixels, right? Minus 40 pixels. And if I going to refresh the page, okay, it will be increased. But another thing I want to include you is, I want to make my height, because I want to increase the height of this. For that we can have height, right? Height property with 50 pixels I am considering. And if I going to refresh, okay, somewhat it will be increased, and I am considering my left padding to 0, top and right padding to 0, and left and right padding to 10 pixels. If I considering this way, okay, it was perfect. And I want to make my curves, that means I want to make these curves as radius, fillet like structure. For that I will use border radius, right? We have border radius property and I am using 20 pixels, which looking very nice like this. Okay, if I going to maximize this page, see, you can see the somewhat there is a linkage between these two structures, right? We have linkage between these two structures by the indication of this green color element here. Okay, for this and for this, somehow this representation brings better understanding of our web page. Okay, and for example, even though it is not good, I am not satisfied with this element, right? Because it is a long green, right? Long green, and I want to make my thing here as the clipboard or anything. Let me open our Google, and I am searching for clipboard symbol, copy and paste, right? I am searching for this, and if you see here, Emojipedia, copy this clipboard image, and I am pasting it within our content, right? Within our content, I am pasting that clipboard symbol. See here, if I made refresh, see here we have clipboard symbol, right? We have clipboard symbol, and the padding will be decreased. Okay, if I remove this background color and I am refreshing, see, we have padding which gives you an linkage between these two content, right? And we have clipboard. See here, we have better representation, that we have linkage that which continues to this next page. Okay, after this page we have to read this page. That means we have linkage between these two pages. And I am removing this background color here, and I am going to refresh. If I maximize it, see here, this is in a good looking manner, right? I think you might be clear of how these pseudo elements will be worked for our web page designing, right? We can have a lot of usages with these pseudo elements. That means we are going to apply. If I apply this thing to the before, I am using before element here. If I use before, I am going to refresh. There is no change. The element will be as it is, like we have in the after pseudo element. Why? Because we are setting these top and right attributes, right? We are setting these top and right properties in this minus 40 pixels to the top and right to the 0. But what the usage of this before and the top after? The usage of this applying before and the after for this pseudo element is, if we use before for this pseudo element, for the particular pseudo element, that means this content will be the first child of the entire h2 header. Okay, if we use before here, this content, okay, this entire content will be the first child of this h2 header. Okay, if we use after here, there is no change in our output, but the internal thing is, it is the last child of this h2 header. Okay, this entire thing is the last child of this h2 header. Okay, this is the general usage of the pseudo elements to our web page. And I want to thank you all for being with me till here. And we have done a lot of css and html fundamentals so far, and I think you have a better understanding of every lectures if you follow carefully. And we will catch up in the later videos. Thank you.